kid, I had dreamed about being able to breathe underwater. Basically, I wanted to be Ariel. I grew up loving the ocean, and I've always been fascinated with the fact that there is a whole other world right under the surface of the water, and 95% of it remains unexplored. Thankfully, scuba diving was invented, a recreation that allows humans to do something previously impossible: breathe underwater. The concept of scuba diving dates back as early as the 3rd century BC, when Aristotle reportedly came up with the idea of breathing underwater. For years, scientists all over the world had tried to invent an underwater breathing device, but limited technology and use of improper equipment led to many failures. But in 1943, Jacques Cousteau and Émile Gagnon created the first successful underwater breathing system called the aqualung. It is now currently referred to as the self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, aka scuba. This invention was the key factor that revolutionized underwater exploration, allowing people everywhere to discover a world that was previously unexplorable. But why was this one invention so revolutionary? Why couldn't you just take a breathing tube, leave one end open in the air, place the other end in your mouth, and dive down into the water and start breathing? The answer has to do with physics and physiology. So let's briefly go over the physiology of breathing. When breathing on the surface, our lungs expand against atmospheric air pressure that is equal to the pressure inside of our lungs, making the work of breathing minimal. But say you're underwater and breathing from a hose located at surface level, taking in air at atmospheric pressure. This creates a totally different outcome. Your lungs are taking in air that is at atmospheric pressure, but are trying to expand against water pressure that, depending on depth, can be many times greater than the atmospheric pressure. The deeper you go, the greater the water pressure. This means that the muscles of respiration have to work a whole lot harder in order to get air into your lungs. The end result is that it is impossible to breathe in atmospheric air when you are deeper than a few feet. Here's the brilliance of Cousteau's invention. The aqualung contains a 2-stage regulator that delivered air to your lungs at the same pressure as the water surrounding you. This means that, with this device, it is no harder to breathe air underwater than it is to breathe air while standing on the surface. But the regulator is not the only piece of equipment necessary to scuba dive. A list of scuba equipment includes, and for this my wonderful assistant will demonstrate, a mask, a snorkel, diving boots, put them into the fins, a dry/wet suit depending on water temperature, and Mr. Lutz doesn't have one, a tank, Mr. Lutz also doesn't have one, a regulator. This is the first stage of the regulator, and it connects to the tank. And then this is the second stage. It's what you breathe from. An octopus, which is an alternate regulator. A BCD, which is this vest, and a dive computer. There you go. The most common dive tank used holds 80 cubic feet of air that is compressed to 3,000 psi, pounds per square inch. This provides a sufficient amount of air required for a normal dive. The tank then attaches to the first stage of the regulator, which converts the 3,000 psi to about 150 psi. The second stage of the regulator is the part that you breathe from, which converts the 150 psi to ambient pressure based on your depth. The BCD stands for Buoyancy Control Device and is defined as, quote, an inflatable, usually vest-like piece of scuba equipment that is equipped with a harness for an air tank, is connected by a hose to the tank's regulator, and is used to control buoyancy, as the controlling descents, and ascents and establishing neutral buoyancy at a desired depth. End quote. Basically, the BCD allows a diver to sink or rise during their dive and control where they are in the water. The dive computer is a device used to measure the time of your dive, the depth of your dive, the amount of time you can stay at a certain depth without getting decompression sickness, also known as the bends. When breathing in air that is at higher pressure than atmospheric pressure, nitrogen molecules are dissolved into your bloodstream. When diving, if you stay at a certain depth for too long, or if you ascend to the surface too quickly, the nitrogen will not have enough time to diffuse out of your blood through your lungs. This results in the bends. Symptoms include joint pain, headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and can ultimately lead to death. In order to prevent the bends and other hazards, a diver must take multiple safety precautions. First of all, it is vital that divers always complete a safety stop on all dives. A safety stop is usually a quick 3 to 5 minute stop measured by your dive computer that is made between 15 to 20 feet beneath the surface while ascending from a dive. Most scuba organizations make taking safety stops mandatory because it gives absorbed nitrogen extra time to diffuse out of the body. Another safety precaution made during scuba diving is called a decompression stop. A diver must take a decompression stop when they have exceeded the NDL, no decompression limits. This occurs when divers stay at a certain depth for too long. Decompression stops vary depending on your depth and the amount of time you stay at that depth. But a typical example of an emergency decompression stop would be stopping around 40 feet for 15 minutes. After making the decompression stop, the diver would also have to complete the mandatory safety stop to make sure all of the nitrogen has been eliminated. Because of the potential risks, it is very important to always monitor depth, time, and the amount of air left in a tank at all times. If you were to ask a scuba instructor or diver the most important rule of scuba diving, they would say, never hold your breath. Always continue to breathe no matter what. Because of Boyle's law, if you hold your breath underwater and accidentally ascend upward to an area of less water pressure, your lungs could potentially explode due to the air inside of them expanding. Another equally important rule of scuba diving would be to follow the buddy system, which means that divers must never dive alone. Buddies should always check each other's equipment before a dive, make and follow the same dive plan, and always maintain close contact. For example, if you are diving alone and you run out of air in your air tank, how will you be able to breathe? Having another person with you provides an alternate air source that you can rely on. If you dive alone, you die alone. So how does one actually become a scuba diver? There are many organizations that offer scuba diving certifications, but the biggest and most well-known agency based in the United States is called PADI, standing for Professional Association of Diving Instructors. The PADI certification course consists of 3 stages. The first stage is knowledge development, where one learns all about the science behind scuba diving, the underwater scuba procedures, and the underwater diving signals. For my certification, I took the online PADI Open Water Diver e-learning course, but you could always go to a local dive shop and take classes. At the end of the course, you must take an exam to make sure you have mastered the basics of diving. The second stage of certification is confined water dives, where you learn basic scuba skills in a pool or off a calm beach. Here you practice setting up scuba gear, getting water out of the mask, entering and leaving the water, buoyancy control, underwater navigation, and of course, safety procedures. The final stage of scuba certification is 4 open water dives, where you will be able to apply the knowledge and skills learned in the first 2 stages of certification during real dives. After these 4 dives are completed, you are officially a certified scuba diver. Being a certified scuba diver provides you with lots of job opportunities. There are many career options that involve scuba diving, and some of these careers include marine biology, photography, law enforcement, and dive instructing. Marine biologists utilize scuba diving to be able to observe marine life in their natural habitat, studying how different species interact and live. Photographers may specialize in underwater photography, and scuba diving allows them to capture images of wildlife in their natural environment. Police divers are members of the law enforcement who use scuba diving in order to search for evidence, recover bodies, and rescue people in distress. But, in my opinion, dive instructors have the best job because they get to teach scuba diving for a living. My dad, who was an open water scuba instructor while he was at West Point, was the person who inspired me and my brother to become scuba certified. Jake and I received our open water scuba certification in the summer of 2016 while vacationing at the Cayman Islands. I'm not going to lie, I was extremely nervous on my first dive. I had no idea what to expect and was only thinking about all of the potential risks. But upon entering the water and making my first descent, all of my fears went away. I opened my eyes and felt like I had entered a completely different world. Everything around me seemed like it was moving in slow motion. This is one of my favorite aspects of scuba diving. Everything is so peaceful. There is literally no noise except for the sound of your own breathing, allowing you to escape from the stress of everyday life. Underwater, it's just you and your thoughts. I consider it a type of meditation where all physical and psychological tension is completely released. Scuba diving is also one of the most mind-opening and humbling experiences in which you are able to explore and discover the intricate complexity of nature. My brother, Dad, and I once sat suspended overlooking a coral reef that dropped 6,000 feet below the surface. My stomach dropped. For a short amount of time, you are able to float and escape to a world unlike any other, experiencing a weightlessness resembling zero gravity. It also gives you an opportunity to step outside of your comfort zone and interact with different species. Scuba diving has allowed me to pet a tame nurse shark. It has allowed me to see eels, lobsters, stingrays, sea turtles, grouper, barracuda, and even reef sharks. But it is not only the large species of wildlife that are captivating. It is the unique, colorful, beautiful groups of smaller fish along with the vibrant coral reefs that are equally, if not more, jaw-dropping. Each little fish seems to have its own intricate pattern, creating a picture resembling something of a mosaic on the ocean floor. Scuba diving allows you to encounter and interact with all of these creatures firsthand. I learned that sharks aren't that scary, and for the most part, if you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. This is a video of a reef shark that my brother, Dad, and I encountered while diving this summer at the Turks and Caicos. For me, one of the best parts of scuba diving is that I am able to share all of these mind-opening experiences with my family. Scuba diving will always be something that we do together, and it has allowed me to create memories with my family that I would never forget. So if you really want to travel or see the world, learn how to scuba dive. The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface, and only 5% of it has been explored. Go out there and start exploring. Get certified. Step outside of your comfort zone and try something new, because I can promise you, scuba diving will be an experience you will never forget. Thank you.